Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus. Coming to you on the 27th of January, the year of our Lord, 2025. It is episode 716. That's right, folks. 716 times I've done this. Well, at least those are the ones that count. How about that? To let you know, today we're going to be talking about McKinney Monday, right? But what we're really going to be talking about is the fact that yet once again it is election time. It's not lost on me that every time I turn around, it seems like there's another election. Believe you me, my wife seems to be tired of them. I'll just put it that way. Every time it's another election. It's like there's never any rest. Well, this time we're talking about municipal elections. We have the college board, which is the entire county. We have at least a number of cities in Collin County, particularly my hometown, McKinney, Texas, where the city council's up. We're going to have a new mayor, a new at-large city council member in 2 districts. I believe they are 1 and 3 this time. 1 and 3. Now the incumbents, well, we'll cover that in just a minute. And then, of course, the school board. The school board has a number of candidates that are up as well. But before we get there, before we delve into that and spend any time on it, let me remind you the biggest difference you can make, the most help you can be for me, for us actually. Well, I am part of a movement, a pushback, the independent media, if you will, is to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Follow me on the social media of your choice. I have a page and a group at Facebook. I drop in at MeWe, and I am a pro at Gab, and I have Twitter now as well. And you can still listen to the program over at YouTube. Everything's, according to Callus. Why do I do this? That's a good point. We should spend just a moment on that. There is a narrative. There's a narrative put out on everything and anything all the time. The media parrots what they're told. The elected officials, by and large, and I realize when I say this, it's going to sound terrible, but I think it's fair. They don't have their own voice anymore. Sometimes they're speaking for the people that got them elected, sometimes, and that can have more than one meaning, and sometimes they're just speaking for the party. I myself would desire to have candidates and elected officials that were themselves independent, have their own thoughts, and take their own action. To that end, I do my best to encourage you to go do your own research. Find the candidate of your choice that best suits your principles, your vision. And I'm going to tell you who my preferred candidates are when they are, a noticeable difference there, that there's an argument that I can make for it. And when it doesn't, I'm just going to say, hey, they're both viable candidates, or there's multiple viable candidates. And I'm going to encourage you to find the one and choose the one that best supports where you come from. Now, look, I am not going to ever cover for Democrat, socialist, leftist, progressive stuff. No, but I'm also going to be fair and even-handed, because there are some legit Democrats out there that are not progressive, leftist, socialists, though I believe them largely to be beholden to that. We got to be fair. We got to be even-handed, because as media, we have a responsibility to give you the information so that you can make an informed choice. But as always, don't take everything I say as the gospel truth, even though I'm going to do my best to give you the truth, especially the truth as I understand it. But I want you to go double check and do your own research, especially when it's something that could be up to interpretation. Okay, that being said, I've already told you about the media, where you can find me. Here we go, on with the program. Okay, so on a McKinney Monday, typically we talk about McKinney, what's going on here. Now, for those of you that have been following along for a number of years, our long-term mayor is retiring. He was not successful in getting the charter changed to give him a third term. Whether you think that's good or bad, it's just what happened. In addition, the bonds to fund the airport were shot down. That doesn't mean that the city council didn't find another way to fund the airport. It doesn't mean that the airport's going to go away. It just means that the one avenue of finance has been taken away. Why does this matter? Well, for many years, the airport has been one of the primary divisions, if you will, with we the people and the city leadership, the city council, those that run the town. And I got to be real honest, where I'm coming from on this, I don't see the massive downside with a good airport on the east side of town. I know there are things that are going to have to be dealt with, different mitigations from noise and pollution, or noise pollution as well, right? And there's going to be some traffic issues. But overall, I think if the airport is done well, the entire county, not just McKinney, but the entire county will benefit. My contention is that the city of McKinney paying for the lion's share of the development there is not going to benefit the city of McKinney proportional to the amount of investment we've made in it. To that end, there are a whole lot of people that just coincidentally have purchased property, some at fire sale prices, some early on, knowing full well that it was inevitable that the airport would be expanded. Progress never stops, especially growth. So to continue to fight this in a way, thinking that you're going to kill the airport is not a good use of your time, in my opinion. If you would focus on limiting the amount of public, aka government, aka taxpayer financing of this airport, that would be a good place to start. I believe there are plenty of businesses out there, or even private equity or venture capitalists that might have an interest in improving that airport. Why wouldn't we let them put their money into it? I mean, we already own the thing. We own the land, we own the grounds, right? The city does. There's no way we can't benefit if we do this well. I suspect that perhaps there's something else going on. I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to talk disparagingly about people that have already invested their own money or their own business's money in this, because that's what I want. I want them to do that. I just don't feel like that we the people should be subsidizing them. And I know that's that pesky independent streak, that pesky free market person in me, right? But the reality is, if you're going to have a publicly owned, aka government owned, aka taxpayer owned airport or entity, we all benefit when a private entity steps up to actually run it, because they typically do it much more efficiently and we get a piece of the action. Now, if your goal is to create more government jobs, more public expense jobs, then that's the way to do it. The city would expand it. The city would put more employees and resources into it. But if your goal is to have a good airport, a good functioning airport, and airlines coming to town, I'm going to suggest that perhaps the private businesses would do a better job at that. That's not to say that a city can't run an airport, because we know that they can. It's not to say that the city can't do a good job of running the airport, and we know that they can. But when you're dealing with a city of, 1.5 million people paying for something like that, that's entirely different than less than 250,000 people paying for it. Now, as much as I don't necessarily want to spend any more government money on this, I could see a path where the county got involved. I mean, because the entire county will benefit from this, especially Plano, Frisco, and Allen, right? And if we were to combine resources, perhaps that would lighten the load on the city of McKinney. Now, that would mean that the McKinney fathers might have to give up a little bit of control on this. They might have to create another board that puts in members from another city or two, which, again, I don't think that's a bad thing, but that's what we're dealing with. I mean, we're already getting state money and federal money because it's an airport. But what if we were to think about it differently? Because there are 1.2 million people, plus or minus, in Collin County. And if we spread that cost over, let's just say, 500,000 homes or pieces of property, or however you want to divvy that up, that's a lot more cost effective than 100,000 homes or whatever in McKinney. Just a thought, not speculating that they're going to be thrilled about it, because I don't know if they will be or not. But if it's done right, and if proper mitigation measures are taken, even the folks down in Fairview that are potentially affected by the flight path might see a net positive out of this. It's not to say that there aren't going to be negatives. It's not to say that some people are going to be unhappy, because somebody's always going to be unhappy, no matter what you do, no matter how you develop. I get it. Been through this before once in my life, dealing with people that did not like it when a major airport expanded. Understandably so. But as I say, you knew the airport was there when you went there. Okay, so again, why does this matter? Well, the biggest proponent, or proponents, if you will, of the airport, two of them are stepping down. Two more will be up in 2 years. I don't see this as a terrible thing. To be clear, I've already tried to lay out there's a whole lot of, we'll call it gray, right? There's a lot of details involved in this. And there are some significant benefits that a well-developed airport will bring to not only McKinney, but all of Collin County. And I really want for my listeners to realize that, grasp that, and understand that is a motivation, not the motivation, but a motivation for a lot of people that are pro-airport. I don't think we should have an airport at all costs. I don't think we should have an airport that we, the people of the city of McKinney, pay for lock, stock, and barrel, especially when there are a number of individuals that made good investments early on that are going to reap huge rewards off of this. If anything, I think maybe they ought to pony up a little bit more money, since they're going to get the giant payoff at the backside. But be that as it may, I don't control the world, nor do I control what happens in McKinney, Texas. Now that I've laid this significant groundwork, let's jump in. We have a mayoral race. As I said, the current mayor is terming out. Not sure what he's going to do. My suspicion is he will not go away, but he will not be actively elected in politics anymore. But I would, for be that as it may, and again, I admittedly am not his biggest fan, the guy is a value add as far as tourism and or advertising. And you got to give it to him, right? So I'm not sure we should completely kick him to the curb, metaphorically speaking. So you have two choices. We've got Bill Cox, who is a 3-generation McKinney resident. Family's been very involved in the city of McKinney. He's former mayor pro tem, which means that he had served 2 sessions more than likely on the city council at some time in the past. It may be more, but you don't get to be mayor pro tem typically in your first term. He's been uber involved in all the development of things that have happened. And the family owned a Chevrolet dealership and is now doing developing work. So that being said, the entire council and a good number of the former council have lined up behind this guy, Bill Cox. Now, again, I don't know the guy. I don't have anything negative that I wish to put forth about the guy. I mean, no doubt in my mind he's qualified to do the role. No doubt in my mind that he will bring about more of the same. There will be no significant changes if Bill Cox becomes the next mayor. And if you're thrilled to death with everything that's going on in McKinney, he's obviously going to be your guy. If you think that McKinney's on the right track, he's probably going to be your guy. However, if you look at things and say, perhaps we could do things a little differently in McKinney. Perhaps things could be a little better in McKinney. Perhaps we could rethink some of the things that we've done in McKinney. Perhaps we could, I don't know, change the approach on how we do some of the things in McKinney. Well, then you have an option. His name's Scott Sanford. Now, full disclosure, I've known Scott for years when he was my state rep. Scott and I have not had what I would say is a perfect relationship as a constituent and elected official. I've been hard on Scott in the past for various things, but on the whole, I trust Scott Sanford 100%. On the whole, Scott Sanford is an entirely reasonable guy, very balanced, very even-handed, and it was a very good representative. Now, myself, I want a little bit more of a firebrand. Myself, I want a guy that's got a little more fire in the belly. One, I'm talking about a state rep. But as a mayor, I'm kind of thinking we've had enough of that because we've kind of had a little bit of a firebrand in the current mayor. Not on my side of the equation, but I've seen it play out. And there's a whole lot of people in the city of McKinney are kind of done with the divisiveness. They're kind of done with the hate going back and forth. So I look at Scott Sanford. The guy works at Cottonwood, right? One of the largest Baptist churches in the area. He's an executive pastor, so he knows how to run the church. He knows how to work numbers. He worked as a state rep, so he's got those those connections, those affiliations in the past. Perhaps that brings us some access, if you will, down in Austin that we wouldn't otherwise had. He's got a long-standing relationship with several other elected officials at different places along the axis between city and state. I don't see that as a bad thing. And because I know him to be a kind guy, I know him to be very steady, I'm more than confident that he would make the right guy to be the mayor. Now, I've been accused of being an extremist and therefore a guy that I would like or support therefore be one. Well, guilt by association, is that the game we're going to play now? Look, as aggressive as I might be, that's not Scott Sanford. As narrow-minded as I might have been accused of being, I don't see that in Scott Sanford either. He's a gracious, kind guy that's always looking for the positive way to do things. Again, ideal for somebody that is going to take the city in a new direction. As far as all of his qualifications and everything else, hey, that stands on its own. Go look the guy up, check it out. But again, I don't have to talk negatively about Bill Cox. I've already stated he's a guy that's been around, he's been involved, he's got great qualifications as well. We have a legitimate race with two good quality candidates, slightly different visions, perhaps slightly different engagement. I don't know Bill, so I can't speak about him, but we have two good choices. I'm inclined to stick with Scott Sanford because I think whatever might have been, in my mind, a shortcoming at the state legislature is ideal and probably awesome for the city council as the mayor. That's my perceived weakness is a strength in this scenario. And when the time comes, perhaps I endorse him. When the time comes, I maybe can even coax him into doing an interview of why he's, the best guy for the mayor. And I'd also be happy to talk to, Bill Cox if the opportunity presented itself. But it's very nice to be able to go into a election and really not dislike either candidate. I mean, I would prefer at the city to have candidates that I can say legitimately, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the guy politically, but he's a solid guy. He stands on his own and, quite frankly, he represents his people well. Oh, by the way, I have done that for Justin Beller. I mean, I've gotten feedback from his constituents. I've seen him in action, and I'm sure there's things that we disagree with or we're coming at things for a different angle. Say what you want. The guy represents his district well, according to the people that live in his district. Now, maybe some of my hardcore Republican friends are not happy with that, but D1 is not like my district. As far as that goes, District 3, don't know if anybody's going to run against Jeray Feltus. I don't have a strong opinion there one way or another. She hasn't done anything to upset the apple cart. Again, it's just going to be more of the same. I hate to say it. As Mayor Pro Tem, again, I don't want to talk disparagingly. I don't want to be rude because I don't know her. I haven't seen anything that excites me or anything that would make me think that she's terrible. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Now becomes we pivot over to the open race, right? We have the seat that Charlie Phillips cannot run again for. Now, in my mind, for whatever reason, I thought, if the mayor was truly interested in serving the city of McKinney and not being the mayor, he might choose to run for that. That would have been the way forward if he wanted to stay in elected office. Now, I admit I've talked to several friends of mine, some that like the mayor, some that don't, and they just don't think that's reasonable to go from being a mayor to just a regular old city council member. And that's a fair point. I get it. The same could potentially be said, well, I was a state rep, now I'm going to be the mayor. Just saying. What does that look like? Well, to my knowledge, we don't have a significant candidate for that seat. I'm looking, I'm waiting. Somebody might have announced, and if somebody announced, the fact that I don't know indicates that it wasn't a big splash. I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out. I imagine there's a number of people waiting until the last day to sign up to be on the ballot. It could be the most interesting race. It really could. While we're talking about interesting races, the school board. We've got two guys on there that are I want to say this. They're way past their prime. Whether I agree with them or not, whether they're nice people or not, and I think both of them are generally nice guys. I don't have any, specific thing that I dislike about them. That's not what this is about. They're way past their prime. We're talking about a school district that has, 50,000 students or whatever in it. We should be very concerned about what we're doing and where the district's going. We just spent a ton of money on a new superintendent and multiple assistant superintendents, a ton of money. And I'm curious if that's going to give us a net positive out of this. Now, it is true, and I've always been open and honest about this. I myself, not a big fan of government schools. And as far as most of my friends, they think the schools are broken or the schools aren't working properly. I actually think they are working the way they were designed by John Dewey et al. They're churning out students that are capable of doing menial tasks. Now, maybe you think I'm being derogatory or I'm being negative, but I'm just trying to look at the big picture here. That being said, we have a lot of awesome teachers that work in McKinney ISD. We have a lot of good faculty or other people that are involved within the school district that are great. I'm not sure how we justify all the administrators that we have. I'm not sure how we justify all the money that we spend on business or buildings that we're not even necessarily using to their full capabilities. But again, that's outside my purview. I am not on the school board, but perhaps if we had people on the school board that would ask questions and look into things and question the narrative they're being given, we would be able to get those answers. Now, my friend Chad Green served his term. He's intending on running for another term. He's been attacked. He's been vilified. He's been censured. He's been lied about. They doxed his family. All sorts of this crazy nonsense because the guy asked some questions or he pushed back on some things. Now, I'm sure that people have rewritten history and people have dreamed up all sorts of these terrible, evil things that Chad Green has done. But I can tell you, being my friend, that he's committed to improving the government schools. He is committed to getting a return on the investment that we, the property taxpayers out here, pay. He's committed to ensuring that students get the best education possible. So I'm really not sure how he's the devil incarnate in the eyes of some of these folks that are so concerned about the school board. And keep in mind, he's just one vote out of 7. And he's usually the lone no vote. Now, that's not a fun place to be, especially when you're being vilified and mischaracterized and quite frankly lied about and abused for asking questions. And what's interesting to me is when you have 6 votes, what's with all the angst? And you have protesters showing up hating on Chad Green for reasons that don't make sense to me. Setting aside the fact that he and I actually don't agree on the school district itself as far as the premise and what it's supposed to do, I've submitted that he's in a better place to know about it than I am. That this is his thing, it's not mine. My philosophical rejection of government education is just that. It's philosophical. When it comes down to the general nuts and bolts of how things work and the way the world works, we're going to have government schools. And if we're going to have government schools, I want a guy that's going to at least ask, why are we doing this and is it working? And if it's not working, what could we do better? Instead, you get the usual mantra, you hate teachers, you hate the school, you hate students. That's simply not true. And there are going to be people that bring up various, niche arguments, right? But on the grand scale of things, of all the elected officials that you have up there, what's with all the hate? I mean, I'm going to resist the urge to disparage some of the other members. I mean, the guy that's running, he might be perfectly qualified. I don't know. And the fact that Chad Green's picked up one opponent, and it's very likely we're going to pick up another opponent, just shows the irrational fear of a single vote on that school district board. And you got to ask yourself why. So I'm just going to ask you, if you consider yourself right of center, if you consider yourself just a well thought out moderate, if you consider yourself a Christian or, right winger or whatever, perhaps be slightly interested in the municipal elections. I know a lot of partisan voters sit out, and then we get the government that we deserve. But I'm going to ask you, just pay a little bit of attention. And if you think it's a rational thing to ask some questions, if you think it's reasonable to say, well, yeah, but what about this? I'm going to tell you, your only option right now is to go vote for Chad Green. I support Chad Green. I've endorsed Chad Green. Chad Green's my friend. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, folks. If you just want a rubber stamp school board, then Chad's not your guy. And again, if certain people would like to label me as extreme or MAGA, I'll refer you to the other 700 plus episodes in my past. I've said time and time again, I'm a Ron Paul guy. I'm a Liberty Republican. My dream would be to take over the government and leave you alone. So I'm not really sure why that's a giant threat, but apparently it is. And on the term of MAGA, again, I still can't wrap my head around why making America great is such an evil, terrible thing. I don't understand why any form of nationalism is immediately terrible, because the opposite would be an internationalism. And I'm not enthusiastic about the Davos crowd coming in here, or let's call it dysfunctional governments from other continents coming here or sending their people here to reimagine what America should be like. So yeah, I guess I don't see nationalism as the evil, and I certainly wouldn't sign on to the Nationalist Socialist Party, which by the way was a socialist party, which would make them left, if you will. I certainly don't want to lock people up for being, we'll just say, perverts. If you're a predator, that's something different. I stand for more liberty than what most people are comfortable for. So if that makes me an extremist, yeah, then Barry Goldwater and I are on the same page. So to the detractors out there, I say, come get it. If you've got a legitimate argument, if you've got a legitimate complaint, post it. Call me out if you think you're right. But you don't get to take it out on the most even-handed, level-headed guy I know that wants to run to be mayor. You don't get to take it out on the guy that actually stands in the gap on behalf of government schools, or shall I say public schools for your nomenclature, even though the vast majority of the people that are around him would love nothing more than to shut down those said government schools. So these are two very solid guys that, yeah, okay, fine. You maybe have legitimate disagreements with, or perhaps you don't like their philosophy or the letter that's after their name, but you got to give people a fair hearing. You've got to be objective. And if you're not willing to do that and you're just going to slander them with name calling, or you're going to judge them guilty by affiliation or by relation, you're no better than the National Socialists that you're claiming that they are. As a matter of fact, you're projecting your own on them. So that's it, folks. That's it. If you value liberty, if you value the freedom of thought and the freedom of discussion, you have to reject that crazy nonsense coming out and the cancel culture that is unfortunately on both sides of the aisle, though much more so on the left. We have to learn to work together. We have to learn to find things that we can actually agree on, particularly at the municipal level, because like it or not, you live down the street from somebody that voted for Donald Trump. And likewise, I live down the street from somebody that voted for Kamala Harris. They're not necessarily my enemies. That's not necessarily a reason to hate somebody, yet that's the world they would like to paint us into. And I'm not down with that. And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.
For all your Texas fashion tees, it's TexianPride.com. Whether you're out honky-tonkin' in Austin, bucking Broncos in Fort Worth, or strolling the San Antonio Riverwalk, Texian Pride is here for you. Support a Texan-owned business and show off your love for Texas with style. Visit TexianPride.com for your next fashionable Texas tee.